We're back.
We are back again.
Yes, again.
Yeah.
Last time we talked about dentists and oral appliance therapy and prescribing habits of physicians as well,
Yeah.
which typically is PAP related.
Correct.
When I speak with dentists, the topic of nasal patency, of the nasal airway, is something that really isn't on the radar. I mean, they know that it's important. You're supposed to breathe through your nose.
Right.
They know that.
Yep.
But there's usually not a lot of discussion with their patients about it. And I don't think most know what to do.
Yeah, and I'd say true for dentists, true for physicians in general, and it's an important factor. I mean, obviously, we have noses for a reason, and I mean, really, let me just kind of flip this back around. We talked about how I started Advent, and the trajectory there, but my reason for being, in many ways, Advent's reason for being, I mean, we unlock potential. That's our why. Like, that's why we show up for work every day. But how we unlock potential is to allow people to breathe in the manner that they're supposed to breathe. And that starts with the nose, and it starts with the nose every time. And that one, it's a bit of a magic trick, and it works, I mean, honestly, every time, meaning that you take somebody whose nose isn't working properly and you do something simple to get that nose working properly, you've profoundly changed that person's life. Now, you take that same person whose throat is also not working properly and you use an oral appliance or a CPAP or whatever you're going to use to keep that throat open. Now you've done something extraordinarily profound. You've gotten the start of the airway working. You've got their throat open when they're sleeping at night. You definitively have changed that person's life. You might have saved that person's life. So, I think that it's a super important aspect of life itself, massively underappreciated. And we talked about, there's usually a reason for everything. So, you said it, and I said it back to you, people don't get it and they don't appreciate it, and I appreciate why they don't appreciate it, because they don't understand it, and there's nothing they can do about it. And so I think if you think about these turf wars that develop, or this misunderstanding that develops, it's because if you're a dentist trying to get folks in oral appliance therapy, because that's the tool that you have, in many ways, the last thing you want to do is send somebody out of your office to go to see an ENT to maybe have something done with your nose, because that patient may never come back to you, and I understand that. So I think there's a natural tendency for human beings to hold on to what they have, and to not want to hand off somebody to somebody else because you may not get that person coming back to you. And then let me take it even to a next level. Then most ENTs don't do what we do at Advent. So at Advent, we focus on office-based procedures to open nose and sinuses. That's what we do.
Yeah. So for listeners, I don't mean to stage this as a commercial for Advent, but what is it that Advent does?
Yeah, I mean, so we fix breathing triangles. We open up the nose. So our specific procedures, the most common procedures that we do at Advent, one would be something called a turbinate reduction, which is just shrinking down the little humidifiers in the nose. So that's a very simple and elegant procedure to allow somebody to breathe properly through the nose. And then another very common procedure that we do at Advent is called balloon sinuplasty. So, and this is all of these things are under local anesthesia. So we numb folks up and get it done. And with balloon sinuplasty, we're using a balloon that is gently entered into the sinus passageway, expanded to open, and removed. And so,
when you say balloon, I think probably most people that are unfamiliar are thinking about like a water balloon
or a party balloon. Yeah. No, we're not. It's not like shaped as
a spy balloon.
The Chinese spy balloon. That's actually an Advent balloon. No, it's not an Advent balloon. We did not create the Chinese spy balloon. But no, the balloon is an angioplasty type balloon. So if folks, I think people are sort of semi-familiar with that, is that there's these balloons that we're talking about. It goes from it's about 1 millimeter when we get it into the sinus opening, and we inflate it to 6 millimeters. So you take something that's shut, and all of a sudden you open it up to 6 millimeters. It's a bony opening. So when we make that change, it stays. We microfracture it open. So I guess sort of to come back at like, well, let me just complete the thought of most ENTs don't do these office procedures. So they focus, if somebody comes in to see them, their thought is it bad enough that I've got to take you to the operating room to fix this? If it isn't, go away. You're kind of bothering me. And if it is, okay, great. But I'm going to take you to the operating and I'm going to do something more invasive to get things open, which may be fine and necessary, but oftentimes it's not. And so for us at Advent, we have very simple ways to do really important things, and that allows us to make that happen, very, very frequently. So you kind of, pointed out the fact that there are many dentists, including dentists in the dental sleep community, that don't necessarily appreciate the nose. And so for those individuals, I have a very, very simple lesson to teach. And I'll start with you. So I'll ask you a very simple question. Do you have a definition of? I'm
gonna jump in there for a second.
Sure.
Those dentists, especially those that are in the dental sleep community, they understand the import of nasal breathing, right? I mean, I assure you, if you talk to them, you wouldn't find one that would go, "Oh, well, that's not important." The issue is that it's circling back to what you touched on earlier, which is I don't know what to do about it. I don't have a solution.
Yeah,
right?
and I guess
I want to be sure that I'm not.
And that's a really important point, because I let me just make this statement, and I'm going to one up you on your statement. Is I'd say most dentists, maybe all dentists that I've met and talked with who are part of the dental sleep community, understand the power of the nose more than all physicians and most of my ENT colleagues. So meaning that I believe the dental sleep community is at a higher level of understanding about the importance of breathing in general and breathing through the nose. So I don't mean to, if that wasn't unclear, if that was not clear, I want to make that clear.
You just made it clear.
So with that clarity though, and then I would agree, then there's just not much you can, what's the ask? And again, especially if you don't have an Advent in your backyard, what are you going to do with that patient that has problems? When I was on the podcast with you and Erin Elliott, I remember she was talking about, like, I think she's got a good go-to resource, but even that go-to resource, you can't tell somebody else what to do. She can't go and tell them to say, you have to do whatever.
Right.
They're going to do what they're going to do. And again, most people don't have access to these simple office-based procedures. Therefore, it's a problem. Kind of where I was going before, but just to make it a very simple statement, is a healthy nose means that the nasal airways are open, the sinus airways are open, and the lining is calm. That's what a human being needs in order to function properly. 100% of folks who have sleep apnea have throats that are not working for them. They're too small for their body. Almost all of those same individuals have impacted nose and sinus anatomy. So when I say almost all, 80% of those folks have issues in the nose and sinuses. And when you don't treat those first, what you end up with is exactly what happens with PAP failure. Is you have somebody with a nose and throat issue, you skip the nose, you slap a CPAP mask on them, they don't like it because they can't breathe through their nose. They don't know that, and so they just take it off and they go about their life. Yeah. And I know this happens is if somebody's seeing a dental sleep practitioner and has put in an oral appliance, yet doesn't really have the proper ability to breathe through their nose, they struggle with the appliance. They're not struggling necessarily with the appliance, they're struggling with breathing through the nose. And so if you have an appliance in your mouth and you can't breathe through your nose, you're not going to do very well. So, kind of what we do at Advent is we start at the beginning and, we play our cards sort of in the order that they're meant to be played, where none of our patients, we are never going to put a patient into an appliance without having a proper nose. Nose open, sinuses open, lining calm. It's mandatory. It's not a nice to have. It's not I hope that this is in place. It's you come in to see us, that's where we're going to go. And assuming there's issues there, obviously, but regardless, I'd say that. And when you do it that way, for me, the reason I'm so passionate about what we do is that, there's a simple and effective process that we can put anybody through that works as well as anything in work. And therefore, why we're growing as an organization is because I want to get that out to as many people who could benefit from that. And then on the flip side, I said it before, is even as big as Advent ever gets, we will never scratch the surface of the need that's out there in the community. So part of what I'm looking to do, what I want to do, is to create a large tent, a tribe of people who are not just in it for themselves, but are in it for treating the patients that are there in front of them. And, we're going to need all of our dental sleep colleagues, any ENT who gets it, all our sleep medicine docs who get it. Like, we need all of those folks in the posse. So I have no beef. I have no argument with anybody who is, really providing good breathing triangle care.
So when you are working, or when you're working to forge that tribe, I mean, what actions are you taking to do that?
I think how I try to forge that tribe is always do unto others as I would hope that they would do unto me. Meaning that, I think for me, it's always trying to be of service to those in my community who are working on the same, issues that we're working with, if that makes any sense. So very specific. It gets back to the kumbaya a little bit before, but this is a truthful kumbaya, is that, when I started the practice, there wasn't, dental sleep medicine was kind of at its infancy, but, really, let's call it 5 to 10 years into doing that, we started in Milwaukee. We started with one practice, and so I identified a couple of, dental sleep practitioners that I was aware of. And then how do you vet those folks? You don't. You basically say, how I vet people is, here, I'm gonna sort of see if I think you got the right stuff, and then I'm going to send you a patient, and then I'm going to hope that you treat them well, and then I'm going to sort of see how that patient feels when they get back to me, and then if we have a good interchange like that or exchange like that, then we're just going to keep going. Sure. And so over the course of my career in Advent's sort of time and being, we've literally put thousands of patients into oral appliance therapy by working with dentists in the community. And those same dentists, when they have patients that they have nose or sinus issues, or they think they have nose or sinus issues, or maybe they need throat surgery, whatever the case may be, then they were able to send them my way, our way. And then that's a very nice, healthy, collegial relationship.
Yep.
And so that's the start of a small tribe, I guess is what I would say. And then I think the challenge, though, is with those individuals, whether it's dental sleep practitioners or sleep med docs, who are part of those sort of head down sheep, you can't, I don't know how you say this, you cannot get a sheep to look up unless it wants to look up. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm going to, meaning that I can't, the system that's broken that I'm trying to, change. Right. My strategy to change that system is not to shout at the wall, but is to connect to patients that we can help and educate those people who might be willing to be educated. And there are a lot of people who don't want to be educated. There are a lot of happy sheep out there sitting in their flocks, heads down. And how do you say
so one of the things that you're talking about is, I'm going to connect some dots here, if that's all right. With these tribes and their sort of insistence on doing what they've always done, and they don't want to learn, they don't want to change their behaviors, right? Mm-hmm. Something I see a lot in dental sleep medicine is dentists that are sort of new to the field. They look at dental sleep medicine and they think there's this mystique to dental sleep, like there are these unique payer issues, or there's these unique issues with dealing with physicians. Mm-hmm. And I've always looked at that and said, yeah, sure, those are challenges that they have to contend with. Mm-hmm. But the real issues are just human issues. Mm-hmm. It's an issue of communicating. It's an issue of relating to one another and trying to understand, what makes someone tick, and addressing them in a way that is aligned with, their values and beliefs, et cetera. And what I'm hearing from you is it's not a professional issue. It's not that ENTs think this way or physicians behave that way or dentists do this. It's those professions, they're people. And they have human issues.
Right.
Humans, just generally speaking here, are sheep, right?
Yeah.
As you mentioned previously. So with that, it's almost like you have to adopt, it's almost this nihilistic approach. I mean, while you're saying, I have this positive view where I want to make an impact, I want to make a change. And at the same time, they're people and
Sure.
they won't change.
Correct.
So then are we just done here? Let's just wrap it up, everybody.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to touch on some of the things you said, and I'd say definitively, in my opinion, there is a wall between the House of Medicine and let's just call it dental sleep medicine or whatever you want to call it. That wall, there is a wall that exists there, and some of the payer issues are because that wall exists. Payers, health insurance payers, they don't want to get into the whole dentistry thing. It's a different ball game. Like there's, if you kind of have two stadiums in the House of Medicine, it's insurance all the time. It's, there's a way the game is played, and over in the House of Dentistry, there's the way that the game is played, and there's certain rules on each place. And so, but there is a wall between medicine and dentistry, and this is, I want to make this explicitly clear. This isn't, I am just the messenger here, but I'm going to say that wall is most of the bricks in that wall, almost all the bricks have been placed by the House of Medicine between medicine and dentistry. So you have a dental sleep medicine practitioner who wants to, either grow their practice, connect with more physicians to grow their practice. They have to break through that wall. And it's really hard to break through walls. And sure. I'm going to tell you, it's, in my opinion, it's not impossible, but it is almost impossible to break through that wall on the dentist side trying to come in. The only way you're going to be able to get through is if you can find a physician in the House of Medicine who sees you, understands what you're able to do, and is able to kind of chip a little hole through to get folks sent through. But otherwise, it's not going to happen. Now I'm sitting on the medicine side of this wall, and I want to break the wall down. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm trying to do. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some misunderstanding about that. But I think so just to be clear, that wall exists. It is really hard. I mean, I think, I know, and you've got a great book, and I've read it, and there's a lot of good points in there. But it isn't for the faint of heart. I mean, I think, and I can't remember in the book if that's there, but I think there's truth to some of those gripes about, there are some legitimate hard aspects, and there are some situations that just are not fair, if you want to call it that way. And then my advice to you, when you're in a situation that's not fair, is to deal with it, is to do what you can do and stop worrying about whatever you can't control. But anyway, there is a divide there between the two different areas of healthcare. And
in the book, I mean, that was something I really tried to center on. That's a belief of mine, is that, for that you talked about it as a wall, mm-hmm. but I mean, for a real meaningful shift to happen, mm-hmm. I mean, it's got to be a tectonic shift
sure.
to alter the landscape. And, that's probably happening, but it's slow, takes a lot of pressure, and over a lot of time. And because of that, I would say to dentists that the onus is on you to take the initiative to change. I mean, in some ways, what you've done with Advent, it's like have an impact on the little pocket of the world that I live in.
Yeah.
So if you're a dentist, go out there and chip away, mm-hmm. and you'll likely find that person to help open up that hole for you to climb through. But thinking that somebody's coming to save you, or the profession is going to change, or some professional body or organization is going to alter the landscape more favorably for any clinician is a pipe dream.
Yeah,
You've got to make it happen.
I mean, I guess, and it's a hokey thing, but I actually believe it is be the change you want to see in the world. And so if you want this thing to happen, you take ownership and make it happen. And then I'd say, back to the tectonic plates that, may or may not shift. Have you ever been in an earthquake?
Yeah.
I don't know if I have, but I would imagine earthquakes are pretty. It's not very comfortable. I would imagine if you're in a decent sized one. Is that true?
Sure.
It's like what's going on? Like if all of a sudden we had an earthquake going on here, the roof is shaking. It's discomforting. Yet that's how tectonic plates, when they really shift, they shift. And I guess back to this wall that I was describing, where the House of Medicine, House of Dentistry. I believe wholeheartedly with what you said is control what's in front of you, be your own destiny, so forth and so on. On the flip side, I'd say I'm sitting over here in the House of Medicine, and we are attempting to break that wall down. And so it's disrupting. It can be like when that wall is coming down, I understand how it might feel when you're on the dental side of things, but when that wall is down is where the future changes. And I don't believe, I believe in a lot of things, but I don't have magical thinking. And knowing the entrenched interests that exist in the dental sleep medicine community and we'll just call it the whatever sleep medicine community, like there are a lot of sheep in those communities, and those sheep have no ability to change what's going on. And how do you make change? In my little corner of the world, we are making change, and we will break that wall down. And part of what I'm trying to do is to be an advocate, not for the sheep, but for people out there who deserve to know that there are alternative treatment options for sleep apnea, like oral appliance therapy, and there are other ones too. But I think that the challenge there is that that message, in my opinion, has to come from the medicine side of the house, and when it does, it resonates in a way that it almost, I wouldn't say can't, but it's going to be really hard to do on the dental side. So if you have somebody, and I'm just one person, but if you have somebody who's advocating for oral appliance therapy that exists in the House of Medicine, basically how you break the wall down is you get a posse of folks on the medicine side that want to tear that wall down, and the wall will come down. You get a posse of folks on the House of Dentistry that want to get that wall to come down. It's not going to come down.
Sure.
So, I'm just being truthful. I'm being the messenger here. And
so your dental sleep's inside guy. You're the inside man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I guess I'm certainly, I'm the last thing from, a threat. If that, I guess how do you say this? I'm a threat to anybody. Here's where I am off. This is a threat. Anybody who if you're going to stand in the way of me trying to give the best care for my patient, yeah, you better. I don't like you, and I'm going to do everything in my power. I don't need to destroy you, but I need to move you out of my way, and I'm going to do what I need to do. So yeah, I'd say you get in my way of the patient that I'm trying to treat. This is a threat, and here it is a threat. If though on the flip side you don't do that, and I wouldn't advise you to do that, then yeah, I'm here from the future, and I'm coming to tell you about all the good things that'll happen in the future, where patients have access to all treatments for obstructive sleep apnea, including oral appliance therapy, and it's a beautiful thing. I've been living in this future for, let's call it, a decade, and let me describe this future. This future is where patients have awareness of the options that exist. These same patients, we start at the beginning of the airway, which is the nose. These patients magically have noses and sinuses that are working and functional. And when necessary, you get them into the appliance, if necessary, that's appropriate, whether that's CPAP or oral appliance therapy. The right treatment for the right individual at the right time is magic. That's the future. It doesn't have to be a future state. It's a present state where we are, and it can be a present state everywhere, but it requires collaboration.
So let me get in my DeLorean and go back to the future.
Yeah.
And when you first started working with dentists a decade or so ago,
yeah,
it was a gradual, an iterative process to get to where you are today.
Yeah.
So describe that process and sort of what you learned about what works and what doesn't work when it comes to working with dentists and oral appliance therapy.
Yeah, I think a lot of things worked and some things didn't work. I think what generally is a barrier when you have a collaboration between any two clinicians is it's a handoff. I'm a sports analogy guy. So, if you don't want to fumble the ball, you hold it with two hands and you never let it go. If, every time you hand it off, there's a chance you might fumble it. And so that's the most dangerous thing you'll do, is handing it off. So if I have a patient that I'm holding on to with both hands and I'm going to now send them over to you, I'm handing the ball off to you, and I've got to trust you. And trust is built up over time. And so anyway, when we first started, it was just understanding that this is an option, this can be an effective option. And when we offer to individuals for whom it looks like it's going to be effective, it was. And then when you sort of, and we did this almost from the beginning, made sure that their nose is working, that's a really magical thing.
How would you make that determination about who it may or may not be effective for?
Unlike, we talked about the sort of the stereotypical mindset where it's CPAP or the highway for most physicians. I don't have, how do you say it? I was programmed the same way, but the programming didn't stick because it doesn't make sense to me. When I'm not a hater, but I'd say when I see a CPAP machine, I see something that I would rather not have to use unless I have to use it. And I come to my patients with the mindset that's very much, I think, in line with how they think. And so in my world, as a specific example, if I have a nose that doesn't work because the anatomy is shut down and there's an option to have an office procedure or surgery, I want the choice and I'm going to choose the office procedure.
Sure.
So my colleagues, my ENT colleagues, most of them don't give their patients that benefit of that choice. I don't think that's right. So regardless, I'd say that same thing. And so when I'm talking to somebody who has obstructive sleep apnea or even primary snoring, it's listening to that person, looking at their data, the sleep study, so forth and so on. Is this an appropriate therapy? And talking about those things. And now, we touched upon this before, is when you offer these options. So let's say it's a mild sleep apnea. We got their nose working, but we need to get their sleep apnea treated. And you offer even-handedly. There's a couple options. We get your nose working. We can get you into a CPAP machine. Through a nose that's open. It's actually fairly mellow. It's just little sort of prongs that sit in the nose. It'll push air in the back of your throat. That'll keep the back of your throat open. So here's one option, and I think that would be a good option for you. On the other hand, there's a different way of going about doing this. There's an oral appliance, which is like retainers that you wear on your upper and lower teeth, and what they're doing is helping to keep your mouth shut to some extent, but they're mostly just pulling your lower jaw forward. When your lower jaw comes forward, your airway is open, and that could be a good option for you as well. And then the additional factors between the two with CPAP, there's a machine that's recording data every night, so we know every single night how long you're using it, is it working, so forth and so on. So it's smart in that way. So there's maybe an additional benefit in going in that direction. The oral appliance doesn't have that same capability. Therefore, how we tend to do that is when we get you an oral appliance, we'll have to get it titrated. Then we'll do a sleep study in the back end of that to make sure that it's working appropriately. Which, I gave way, that's not my talking track. I wouldn't throw that much information at somebody that quickly. But regardless, I'd say, and if I have opinion, maybe I'll offer it at this point. Maybe I'll say, with your degree of sleep apnea, I think the CPAP is going to be the right way to go. And if it's now, here's the deal though: if we get you in a CPAP and it's working well, we're going to know that from the machine, but we're going to know that from you. And so we want to make sure that this is working for you. If it isn't working for you, we need to know that, and we always have the option of going the other direction to an oral appliance. On the flip side, say somebody wants to go oral appliance therapy, you just have the conversation the other way. We'll give this a go, and we'll see how things go. And if you're doing well with it, and the sleep study is confirming that, that's great. And most of these appliances last a long time, so forth and so on. If we try it doesn't work for you, we can always go towards the CPAP. And so, anyway, I gave you way more information than you were looking for, but that when you have that conversation, I guess my point being, when you have that conversation, it isn't 50-50. If you're offering folks those choices, it's like 90-10, meaning like 90% of people actually want oral appliance therapy and like 10, for whatever reason, want CPAP. And that's even-handed. That's me not tipping my hands at all.
Sure.
So I honestly think that for the world at large, let's just look at this country at large, the majority of individuals who are in CPAP machines should be in oral appliance therapy instead of CPAP. They just have never been given the choice. And maybe they don't have a nose that's working either, but that's a separate, sort of discussion.
Yeah. So with that handoff, that you mentioned earlier. What would typically, how would they fumble?
All the way, I mean, all the ways that human beings fumble. And when I say human beings, I mean, dentists as well as their staff. So the fumbles would be not getting the patient in, not communicating about where we are with that patient, not getting the patient back for a sleep study. That was like a consistent. I mean, I literally don't think we ever figured out the right way to go. Here's the ball, get them in an appliance, get them titrated, get them back for the sleep study. That just never really happened with consistency, which is not the worst sin in the world. But what that ended up meaning to me is that the trust factor goes down a bit. And then, I think there were certainly over the course of time, as we used various dentists, then there were some dentists that got, they're the ones that, the sort of out of network, jack up the price kind of thing. And that's sort of like a non-starter. And then there's another group of dentists, I don't even know, you guys probably have a name for them in the dental sleep community, but I call them the crystals and the crystal holders and the chakra whatever strokers. The people who think that that sort of all of life and the life beyond is somehow there's this magical thing that happens with oral appliances. Do you know what I'm talking about at all or not? There are people who believe that there's some chiropractors in the same camp, and there's some physicians in the same camp that they have. This sort of mystical thinking about things that when I open your airway, it's going to open your sixth chakra and your energy level will be, harmonized. And I'm very simple. I'm not mystical. I'm very simple. And I'd say, dude, your throat shuts at night when I get this appliance in your mouth. It's going to hold that open, so your throat doesn't shut. And now the magic is when your throat doesn't shut at night, all of a sudden, instead of stopping breathing 100 times, maybe you'll do it 5, and that's magical. So, but I'm not going to talk about the magic. So I guess I'm going in a weird direction, but I'd say there are some dental sleep practitioners that kind of weirded my patients and therefore me out, and we said that's probably not a great fit for us. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
We walk in different circles. I don't know the chakra strokers.
Well, I'd stay away from the chakra strokers.
I'll stay away.
And don't have your chakras stroked. I would discourage you from that.
At least not on camera.
Exactly.
When it did work, when it does work, what are you seeing different? What are you seeing different from chakra stroking and fumbling?
The simplest thing is seeing a patient who's has optimal care, in my opinion. To me, optimal. What is again? I have an opinion about what optimal means.
Define.
Optimal means. Really, from if we just talk about the breathing triangle, nose airway patent, sinus airway patent, lining calm, throat open. It's not rocket science. You bang down that list, and you could get somebody in that state in a minimally invasive fashion, meaning office-based nose and sinus procedures, oral appliance therapy. And there's a lot of people who would qualify for something like that. You've done something for somebody that the system around you is not only incapable of doing, they're not going to do it because there are too many vested interests in the failed order that exists, if that makes sense. So basically, back to being the change that you want to see in the world, the benefit of a collaboration like that is that we've been the change that we want to see in the world. We've done something that could be done in 2023, whatever year we're in when we're doing this, that is exactly the optimization of the technology that exists today. It's simple, it's effective, it's clean, it's all good, and it's a bit of a FU to the system that isn't good, if that makes sense. So when it works extraordinarily well. And even when it fails, let me go this way. This is a weird direction to go in. And when it fails wonderfully. Meaning that back to what I was just talking about before when I was showing you the hand thing is, well, it's a different hand. The chakra thing is a different hand thing, but this different hand thing that I was just going at, but this my even hand and my CPAP oral appliance therapy thing, there's no sin when you have a honest, informed discussion with a patient about their options, and they choose, as a specific example, oral appliance therapy, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't work for them. They can't tolerate it. Whatever. It's not doing the trick, and we move into CPAP for that patient, nasal CPAP. That's not a failure. That's a victory. Now it's a failure if you knew it was going to fail and you try to like game the system. I'm not talking about it. I'm saying no. Here are your options, and you choose this, and it doesn't work for you. Now we move over here. That's good. That's where, in my mind, with kind of where there is that collaboration between medicine and dentistry, where is that openness to finding the right option for each individual. There's a partnership with the patients that we're treating that is profoundly humane, and is incapable of failing even when it doesn't achieve the outcomes that are desired. I don't know if that makes sense. So to me, like, that's the, as flawed human beings as I am, at least, I like to have systems that work for flawed people like me. And when you have something like that, it's beautiful, it's profound. And most of things in medicine and dentistry aren't like that. Most things are just not optimal. So yeah, I mean, I guess my statement on that is, when it works well, for when and again, and let me just state this thing, and I stated it earlier, is there is no more important health issue than the issue that we're talking about. Therefore, meaning everything in the body is downstream from what we call the breathing triangle. Everything is downstream. Everything is less important than breathing. Everything. Your heart is, your brain is, whatever the case may be. So, like, as an example, if your chakra stopped working and you fell on the ground and you're out of it, and we called 911 and they came in here, they'd be following the ABCs. And they do it in that order. And if they don't have A, they're not moving on to B and C yet. In day-to-day life, for people walking around the world, somehow ABCs don't matter. And airway is first, and therefore, I guess I'd say there's sort of allows me to be as simple-minded as I actually am, which is like, dude, I just have to focus on the airway. I got to get your nose working. I got to get your throat open. Everything else is downstream. I feel like dental sleep medicine and sleep medicine overcomplicates things. There's a lot of talk about insomnia and this and that and the other thing, and I'm like, you know what? That's downstream.
Let's get them breathing.
Let's get them breathing. I mean, I think at the end of the day, and now it's like, well, the naysayer would say, well, that's not enough. I mean, there's so many other things. And I'd say, you know what? Until we get this A thing down, sound, I don't think we're capable of doing all these other things. And I've been in conferences where I kind of, stick out a bit as a sore thumb, is because we're talking about 10,000 different things about this patient. And I'm like, is their nose working? Do we know that? We got something to make sure the throat's open, and there's this tendency to chase bright, shiny objects that infects everybody, especially clinicians. And we, at the end of the day, I guess, at least as I see it, this isn't that complicated. It's very simple. And the tools and technologies we have today, oral appliance therapy being a very important one, are sufficient to get the job done without any question. So, but it requires collaboration. In this day and age, typically, most practices, it requires a dentist who gets it combined with a physician who gets it and who are willing to work together. And that's a rarity. At least from what I know and what I've seen, I don't think that happens very often.
And that's something I really want to delve more into. But right now, I've got to cancel my chakra stroking appointment.
Exactly. I know you signed up for that. We got to get rid of that. So next time. Oral appliance therapy is a medical treatment. True or false?
Keep going.
True or false?
Just keep going.
If it's not a medical treatment, what condition are we treating with oral appliance therapy?
Obstructive sleep apnea.
Which is a medical condition.
Okay.
Agreed?
Yes.
You're a very difficult witness here.